All right, I think we're recording now. Hello, everybody. This is Robert Mansour. I am very excited about a special guest that I have today. Her name is Patti Handy, and she is a financial advisor. She should be on the screen if we're doing this right. She's the lovely lady in red, and I'm the guy wearing the blue shirt here. I'm a lawyer here in town in the Los Angeles area. My areas of practice include estate planning, wills, living trusts, powers of attorney, healthcare documents, guardianship nominations for minor children, things of that nature. And because of my area of practice, I often have to intersect with other financial professionals, or with financial professionals, I should say, tax advisors, CPAs. And it's always nice to have people in town that I can trust, that I value their opinion, and they are easy to work with, and they really understand their stuff. And so today I have financial advisor Patti Handy with me. She is with Vance Wealth, and she is going to talk to us today about a variety of things, but just a little bit about her background. Patti spent many years in the mortgage industry. She's always had a foot in the financial realm, one way or another. She's a published author. She's written, I think, 2 books, right, Patti?
2 when it comes to money topics,
Yes.
four total.
Yes, and I believe those are available on Amazon and other resources as well.
Yes.
So too much background. We want to get into the meat of the matter. I want to make sure that we can give our audience some really good information that they can sink their teeth into, and that they can start using little morsels that can help guide them. So enough talking about you and me and how great we are. Let's get into what we've titled 6 Life Lessons from a Financial Advisor. So the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is how you got into the financial advice arena. How did you become a financial advisor?
Well, what basically inspired me really is multifaceted, but it stems really from my divorce many years ago. My son was 18 months old, and at the time I was in corporate banking on the institutional side. And I was pregnant with my son, and our bank closed that I was working at. And so I was unemployed. And I thought, well, I'm just going to enjoy my pregnancy and enjoy some time with my son. And when he was 18 months, like I said, we got divorced. So I was technically, unemployed at that time. And I remember a moment in time when I was literally fetal position on the floor, sobbing with just the overwhelm of the divorce, overwhelm of how I was going to raise my son on my own, essentially, and just juggle everything. And I had this weird random thought that was, I'm going to be okay financially because I kind of know what I'm doing. And I, thank my parents for that. They taught me well on how to respect money and just how to manage it well. And it brought a sense of calm, as odd as that sounds, in that moment of complete despair. And it wasn't until many years later that I got out of this, mess, emotionally. But I have to say, even with that knowledge that I had, I still got myself in a little bit of a pickle. I got, some credit card debt that I didn't like. I did the cardinal sin, which was I took some money out of a retirement account.
Okay.
It was just when I wanted to be at home with him, so I didn't go get a full-time job again. And so it just was a situation where I thought, I need to help women. I need to help individuals who are going through such an event, and help them become empowered and educated. And I want to bring this financial piece to others. So that's sort of how I transitioned from the mortgage world into the financial world.
It's interesting you say that, because sometimes I like to tell my clients, I say, look, if you're going to go down this journey, it's really nice to have I liken it to river rafting. If you go river rafting, you don't want to be in the boat by yourself, especially if you've never been river rafting. It's nice to have somebody, a guide in that river boat with you, and not a guide that you bring in maybe halfway through the journey. It's often really great to have that person there from the very beginning, because that person knows where all the dips are, where the dangerous rocks are, where the trees are, and can guide you down that river. So I always liken it to a river rafting guide. And it sounds to me like you have been down the river.
Yeah.
you know where all the bumps are. And somebody who is, especially somebody who may be going through the similar journey, would really benefit from having you on board and guiding that person through the river rafting experience. I mean, I suppose sometimes you feel like a guide, don't you?
Absolutely. There's a lot of coaching, for lack of better words, that goes along with this. Um, we are always dealing with bumps in our life, and it's one thing understanding the mechanics and the academics of the stock market and what to do with investing, but there's a lot of behavioral coaching that goes along with it. A lot of, pulling back the reins when fear and panic set in. So yes, there is definitely a lot of conversations, a lot of listening. I think a good financial planner is a far better listener than talker. And I think it's important for us as planners to get a deep understanding of what they're going through. And having been through a divorce and dealt with loss and that, raising being a single mom and raising a son and whatnot, it's definitely helpful in terms of being able to relate and share some experiences that I did that helped.
You know, I don't know if this dovetails into my next question or not, and forgive me, I might be surprising you here, but I guess a lot of people might really be asking, what does a financial advisor do? In other words, a lot of clients don't know what I do. They're like, oh, he does estate planning, but they don't know what that is. Some people think I'm selling real estate because they hear the word estate and they're like, oh, I think he sells houses or something. No, I don't. So do you, in a very brief way, could you explain to the audience what it is that a financial advisor actually does?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, different advisors, can run their practice a little bit differently. Vance Wealth is a little unique in that we don't only look at what we manage in terms of assets. So we help them take their assets and invest that for them for growth and balance and just maintaining that portfolio for them. We look at things from different strategies. We look at tax strategies that we can apply that will help them keep more of their hard-earned money. If they're business owners, we look at strategies in terms of, from a business perspective, how we can, best strategize for growth and income and tax strategies. We look at the holistic picture of an individual. So we do look at the estate planning side, we look at the insurance side. But as I said, there's also a lot of, behavioral coaching involved. There's a lot of talking off the ledge when, like last year, COVID hit and the market plummeted 35% in 5 weeks. And it was a lot of, okay, this is going to be all right, history. And I'll have actually a chart a little bit later showing that. But there's a lot of, we're their support, we're their platform for financial just peace, financial education.
It sounds to me like you're kind of like doing a macro flyover over their life, if you will.
Absolutely.
And you're kind of seeing everything at once and examining everything and how to fit it together. So that leads me to my next question. You've mentioned, I think, or I've heard you talk about something called life planning, and then there's financial planning. Can you explain the connection between life planning and financial planning?
Sure. So life planning is just that. It's really our life. Yes, financial planning is certainly one piece of that puzzle, but we are dealing with our emotional health, our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health. So I often talk about having a check-in with yourself as to where you're at in those places. So are you at a place where you physically are feeling well? If not, what has to happen to get well? What steps, although small, that you should take to get healthy? If you're not mentally or emotionally feeling well, what has to happen? It's been quite a year, obviously, with COVID, and there's been stress out of the, it's crazy.
Yes.
So it's checking in with yourself, reaching out for help if you need that help, emotionally or mentally. Spiritually, are you at where you want to be? From a spiritual place. So it's about checking in with yourself on all those areas, and then taking little baby steps to get to where you want to be, and sort of like, okay, well, in a year from now, I want to be here. In 5 years, I want to be here. Check in with your relationships, with your family and friends. Just it's again, it's a holistic view of us. We're not just our money, obviously, we are all of that. And I think this past year, we've really taken some time to reflect on our priorities, what is most important for us, what we
Yep.
feel is, truly in our heart. It's not just about, grind. It's about, okay, my family and friends are huge. And so what has to happen for me to incorporate, more joy with them. So it's, that piece. And of course, financial planning brings you some peace to know that you have some choices and freedom within that life planning piece. So it's all part of the puzzle.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes, I mean, I feel guilty of this sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I'm winging it. I think we all feel like that sometimes. And so I think what happens, at least in my practice, when clients come in and they're like, what is this mystical living trust thing you're talking about? At the end of the meeting, they're like, okay, I get it. I understand what this is, how it's going to help me, and it's going to help me make those baby steps towards what I'm trying to achieve. In fact, that's one of the things that I ask my clients, why are you here? What brings you here today? And in many cases, they lost a loved one. There's been a tragedy in their life, and they're like, oh, I got to get my stuff together. In fact, I would wonder, kind of the same question for you before I get to the next question here, and maybe it dovetails into the education component. But have you noticed any kind of incidents or what's the word I'm looking for? Life events that lead people to you for financial advice? And I guess a divorce would be one of them. That would be an instigating event where somebody's like, okay, I gotta take care of this.
Yes. So we've been very, very busy this last year, even through COVID, because there is a lot of fear and panic and sort of unknown. And am I on track? What should I be doing to make sure that I'm doing the right thing with our money?
Am I on track? I love that. Am I on track? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that.
Yeah. So yes, divorce and then a loss of a spouse. We've seen that as well, where typically the men managed the money and the men paid the bills and invested, and the wife wasn't so much. They just felt, he was doing it. I don't really need to watch it. And then he passes and she's left with, I don't know what I'm doing. And that makes me incredibly sad. I want to, even in the happiest of marriages and the healthiest of marriages and the healthiest of individuals, we've learned that stuff happens, and that both husband and wife need to work together, understand what they're doing together. I like to say, have a money date, once a month, just check in with each other. And, I'm not talking about having an hour-long conversation and analysis of your investment portfolio, but it's about just, are we spending where we should be? Are we saving enough? Are we, how are things? Each spouse should know where every account is. They should have a record of all the account numbers, all the debts, what's being invested, where all the accounts are. And it's not a trust issue. It's just a smart decision to know and it might be the wife that passes, and the wife might be the money manager. And that was the case in my situation. I was the money manager in my marriage, and my husband was not. And so I was the upper hand, so to speak, after the marriage when it came to money.
Where is the money, Patti, by the way? Where did you hide it?
Oh dear, that's a whole other conversation. But there was no hiding. But it's important for both people to be empowered and educated and work together as a team, for sure.
It's interesting. You mentioned the word empowerment, and I have found in my practice that, and again, this is where we kind of run parallel lives to some extent. Most of the time, the man is the person handling the money, the husband. There are times when I see otherwise, but I would say a good 75% of the time. And the wife comes to me after losing a spouse, and they are often overwhelmed. Or maybe they didn't lose a spouse, it's just a younger wife, if you will, and they just don't get financial planning. They don't understand it. They just rather not even deal with it. But it sounds to me like you are educating and empowering women. So other than what you just mentioned to us about how you sit down with maybe the loss of a spouse or a divorce, can you touch a little bit more about how you try to empower and educate, especially the women who come to see you? I know that's part of your focus, is helping women with financial planning. So can you shed a little bit more light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I recently heard a quote by a gentleman on a podcast that said that men look at investing in the stock market as a challenge, where women look at it as a threat. And that made me sad, because I thought there's a lot of and I've heard this many times as well, there's a lot of shame around money for women. There's a lot of embarrassment. There's a lot of I don't want to say I don't know these things, and I should know these things, and they feel guilty that they don't understand. And it's not their fault. If they weren't, raised or born, no one taught, it's not taught in schools, and it's typically not taught at home. And unless you were, had a class or learned this, there's no way to learn it. So,
right.
I always say, give yourself some grace and accept the fact that it's okay that, this isn't a strong suit. The academics and the mechanics of learning about the markets and money is really not that hard. It's just, they haven't seen it. They haven't been taught it. So yes, education is a big part of what I do. I think I'm a teacher at heart, and I feel that empowerment brings a sense of security and safety. And that's what we long for, to know that we're going to be okay when we retire, that we're not going to be homeless, that we're, going to be able to live in our own home without having to move in with our kids or, whatever else happens. So I definitely want to create confidence. I want to create clarity around money for women. And I know that women tend to outlive their spouse, that we just talked about. So it's really important for me to make sure that these women have this empowerment. And I was recently chatting with a friend who did a lot of work with the UCLA and YMCA, and they dealt with a lot of women in domestic violence situations. And a very large percentage of the women said they had to stay in these physically abusive relationships because they didn't have the financial knowledge to make that break. I mean,
oh dear.
That just breaks my heart. It's like, oh my gosh, these women are in these horrible situations because they feel like they have no choice. And that's just not okay. That is absolutely not okay. So
right.
Yeah.
I think that I think the education piece is a very important thing. And then once I would assume, okay, so here's what I experience, and then you let me know if you experience the same thing. People come to me and they don't understand estate planning or whatever. And I tell them, look, you're not going to walk out of here knowing everything there is to know. Okay. Right. I, as a lawyer of nearly 30 years experience, I'm always learning. So I don't expect the client to know everything, but I have found that after about an hour or two of sitting down and talking, they walk out of there feeling like so much better because they have enough education. They don't need to know everything. They just need to know enough for themselves. And then they can rely on somebody like you to steer them this way or that way. But they don't need to walk out with a PhD in financial planning. They just, do you find that after an hour or two that someone who was really trepidatious to see you walks out feeling has a much stronger sense of themselves and where they're going, even after an hour or two?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really about, they feel good that they took that step. It isn't so much that they've learned so much about the markets or the academics of financial planning, but it's like, okay, I'm taking control of my situation right now, and I'm taking steps to better position myself. Like you, I am learning all the time. When you stop learning, I always say you're either moving forwards or backwards. So you better move forwards, right? So we're always learning, and things are always changing. So we have to be on our game all the time. And as long as the client is open to learning and growing, it's ongoing. I mean, we have clients, that Advanced Wealth has had clients, for decades, and it's a constant, that relationship is constantly changing and evolving, and we change and evolve the plan with their life happening. So you cannot have a plan in place and then just say you're done. Your life doesn't work that way. You've got to continually monitor and change and update as life changes. Yeah,
I tell clients it's like going to a doctor. You got to go to a doctor at least every few years because your body changes. You may need to take different medications. You may need to change your lifestyle a little bit. So the same thing in the legal and the financial realm. You don't just set it and forget it.
Right.
You have to check in on it every so often and make sure you're doing the right thing. So speaking of the right thing, let's talk about some of the wrong things. Let's talk about common mistakes people make and maybe what they can do to correct those mistakes. What do you see as far as like some of the most common errors people make when it comes to financial planning?
There's a few. So one is not really having a financial plan in place, not really getting a handle on where they are today in terms of a budget, what they spend, what they're saving, what's coming in, what's going out, what's cash flow look like, and then where they want to be in X number of years. And then looking at filling in that gap. What are the steps they have to take to fill in those gaps? Having that plan in place brings a sense of calm, I think, in our lives. Knowing again that you're taking control, and a lot of people just. I mean, I think there was a statistic recently I read. I forget the numbers, but it was the percentage of individuals and the time they spend planning a vacation and planning the details of the vacation far surpasses their planning in their financial world.
Well, wait a minute, Patty. Hold on. I'm going to challenge you here. I don't want to come and see you, Patty, if you're going to tell me that I haven't been planning and I don't have a roadmap and have I done a budget. I'm embarrassed. I don't want to. It's like if I haven't gone to the dentist, in a year or two, or, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to go because I know the dentist is going to be all over my case. I should have done this. One thing that I see, clients come and they apologize to me. They spend like a minute apologizing. I know I should have done something, but I didn't. I'm like, look, relax. Most people haven't done anything. It's totally fine. So I think that what you're raising even makes me kind of nervous. I'm like, uh-oh, did I do a budget? Uh-oh, did I do this? Do you find that people are embarrassed to come and see you and say, do they apologize to you?
Sometimes
Okay.
No. But
that shouldn't be a reason not to see you.
No, not at all. And it's, you know what? It's a judgment-free zone. We do
Good.
not judge. We do not, and we don't present in such a way where we're pointing out what they've done wrong.
Yeah, like
we do not. It's about taking where they are today and looking about where they want to be and helping them get there.
Yeah.
And so they have to celebrate those little wins, even if they're little wins. I think it's important to celebrate the baby steps that we all take, whether it's financial planning or otherwise. But no, absolutely. But let me say, kind of what I said earlier is that, especially with women, there is a lot of shame and there's a lot of embarrassment around money. And they don't really want to talk about the fact that they don't know as much as they do, or they don't really know what they're doing or how to do it. And that's where the education and the empowerment piece is really big for me. So, it's like a teacher. When your classroom walks in the door, you're not telling the kids, you should know this already. You should absolutely know this already.
Right.
I'm a teacher. I'm going to just teach. And every kid's going to be in a different place in terms of where they're at with they understand a particular subject. So you don't scold a kid for not knowing something, and we certainly don't scold, clients. I mean, that's not even a word we use. But no, it's absolutely important for them to feel safe.
Well, I just want to assure the viewers who might be hesitant to pick up the phone that Patti Handy is not going to be scolding anyone, and neither am I, because most people, I will say this, I wasn't always practicing in this area of law. I used to do another area of law. I used to work as a defense lawyer for many years. Even I did not get into estate planning until halfway through my career. So here's Mr. Lawyer Man who didn't have his stuff in order. And frankly, to be honest with you, I probably should update my stuff, to be honest with you. I haven't updated it in a while. So even me, I need to take steps to improve my situation. So the viewers should not be scared at all of you or me. Judgment-free zone. But other than that mistake, not having a financial plan or a compass or any kind of direction, what other errors have you seen in your practice?
Let me before I answer that, let me just make a comment, come back to a comment that I made earlier, and that was that even with the knowledge that I had about money after the divorce, I got myself in credit card debt. I pulled from my retirement account, which is
life happens.
Big no. Life happens, and everyone has a story. Everybody has stuff that they bring to the table. So it is absolutely not a situation where, you know, we're looking back. We're looking now and forward. That's it.
Hmm.
So,
I like that.
yeah, yeah. The other thing I would say, just to close out that question, is people who jump in and out of the market, who try to time the market,
Hmm.
is dangerous. People who, if like last year when we had that 35% or so correction after COVID, you know, the some who, you know, were fearful said, I want to jump out. Well, that's the worst thing you can do. You know, jumping out when the market's down and then jumping back in when the market's doing well. You think, oh, great, the market's doing well now, I'm going to go back in. It's really the opposite. You should be taking advantage of opportunities when the market corrects, knowing that it's going to come back. So it's that. And then the other thing I would say is listening to well-intentioned friends or family who give you their suggestions, who don't necessarily know financial advice. And then the noise of the news. The noise of the news makes me crazy. So.
Well, it's interesting because when you mention family, I come from a very big family and everyone has 2 cents about everything. Sometimes, frankly, I don't want to share every detail because I'm going to get 17 different opinions. You have to find those 1 or 2 trusted advisors and just kind of work with them and not solicit necessarily everybody. Now, there might be some people in the family who know what they're talking about, but that's okay. You don't have to get all the advice and listen to all the noise and the news media. But you mentioned something interesting. You talked about timing the market. And I don't know if everybody knows what that means exactly. And if you could talk about what that means and also what it means, what should we be doing during this volatile market? We're obviously having a volatile market right now. And just about a year ago, the market hit rock bottom. I mean, once COVID hit, everything went down. But I don't know if everybody knows what that means to time the market or volatility of the market. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, timing the market basically means, you know, when you should come in the market and when you should get out of the market.
When you should buy.
When you should buy them, yes. When you should buy and when you should sell. Better choice of words.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett can't time the market. Economists can't time the market. Nobody can. There's no golden rule of when you should buy and when you should sell. You should be invested in the stock market only with long-term money. So that means anything that you can't touch or won't touch for at least 7 years, 10 years, and more. So if you're going to buy a house, if you're going to pay for a wedding, if you have some big expenditures coming up in the next few years, don't put it in the stock market. Have the money sitting in fixed income, which is bonds, or in cash. Although they're not returning much, it's a little safer for you to be there knowing you need those funds. The stock market is really, again, for longer term investments. So when you do see the volatility, you just kind of turn your eye to it. And I'll show you again some slides that will express some of that. Knowing it's going to come back and knowing that it's just, you're not touching it. You don't need that money today. So don't worry about it.
It's like, I think I just got a visual in my head when you were talking about that. Like, let's say I'm on a roller coaster and it's dropping like crazy and I get that sick feeling in my stomach.
Yeah.
It would probably not be a good idea for me to jump off the track at that point and try to get out of the roller coaster. I could probably cause much more damage than I will good. So it's probably best for me to just stay in the cart, if you will. I don't know what they call it, the roller coaster cart, whatever, and ride it and then go back up. But I do sometimes, I mean, especially as I get older, when I'm on a big roller coaster, sometimes I can't take it. I want to get out, but I might cause more damage than good, I suppose. But go ahead. You said you had some information to share on the screen. What were you about to share with us?
So let's talk about volatility in the market, because that was something that you had mentioned. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
Give me 1 second here.
Technology
at its best.
Okay, looks like something's happening there. Oh, now I can see your screen.
Okay, you can see that?
I can see all the icons on your desktop and the beautiful background there of the ocean and the rocks.
Oh, you don't see my
I do not see anything beyond your desktop. Oh, I see that now.
You're seeing that? Okay.
Oh, now I see it. It's taking up the entire screen now.
Okay, great. So this is a great indication of, it's kind of a noisy image, but let me walk you through this. So this is
Sure.
starting in 1980 to 2020. So it
Yeah.
essentially covers 40 years. The red dots on the bottom are the intra-year lows. So last year we were down 34%.
Even within 1 year, we had that huge volatility.
We had that kind of volatility.
Wow.
And the gray bars up here are how the year ended.
Ah.
So, okay, we were down 34% during the year, but we ended the year up. And of the last, 31 of the last 41 years, we were positive.
It's interesting. Even just looking at this visual, it looks like there was more positive than negative. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it was positive 31 out of the 41 years.
Okay.
So, here is the 08, 09 crash. This is the year we were down 49%, and we actually ended the year down.
Mm-hmm.
But we've come back up.
Yeah.
You watch these years, but the story here is that during these lows, during these red dots, this is the time where people panic and they go, "Oh my gosh, I'm losing my portfolio." But if they just hung on, they would have been okay at the end of the year with all the positives.
Stay on the roller coaster.
Stay on the roller coaster. The other side is, or the other slide I want to show. Can you see this slide?
Yes, I do. It says
Okay.
growth of $1 million with volatility at the top.
Okay. So this is actually one of my favorite slides. The orange line down here is a representation of taking $1 million and hypothetically putting it in an account earning 1%. Now,
Okay.
Our savings accounts don't pay 1% today, but we're using this just to show you. If you find a money market account or a CD or something, that's 1%. So after 30 years, you've earned 1.3 million. Or you not earned, you have 1.3 million.
Right.
The blue line is it shows the volatility with an average return of about 9% a year, which is traditionally what, in fact, those last 40 years, that prior slide, the average was a 9% return over that 40-year period.
Even with all the ups and downs.
Even with all the volatility, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this slide shows over 30 years, market corrections of 30%. So last year we had a market correction of about 34%, but on average, we've seen 30%. So we see this $1 million, ebb and flow, okay, up and down and up and down. There's a time here where in year 9, our $1 million is now 2.2. Well,
oh, wow.
At year 15, because of the correction, we're back down to 1.1. So somebody might go, "Oh my gosh, what happened? I didn't earn anything, in these last 15 years. Stay the course. Don't panic." Here, year 24, you're up at 7.8 million.
Wow.
At year 25, we had a 30% market correction. You're down to 5.5. So you've lost what, 2.3 million. So the point is, can people stomach it? Can they watch that happen and know, I'm just going to leave it alone and let it be? And had they let it just be and stayed the course, the end of 30 years, you'd be at $14.4 million.
Okay, hold on. Two questions about this slide.
Sure.
Number one question is this individual adding money over the 30 years, or is this just the growth of $1 million with no additional money added to it?
Right, just growth of $1 million with volatility. So it's
wow.
if I took $1 million on year 1, after 30 years, with the compounding of the average of 9% a year, this is
well, hold on a second. What if somebody says, "Listen, Patty, I don't have 30 years. I'm already 50 years old. Somebody like me, I'm in my 50s. Should I just forget about this and say, you know what, all is lost?
No.
Because I don't have 30 years?
No. And some people say, "Well, I don't have $1 million." That's okay.
Right.
Whatever the case is, you have to, this is where we work with our clients and we look at, okay, here's how much time you have, here's what your assets are, here's your other cash flow. We look at, again, the holistic piece. If they've got a pension that they are using for cash flow, if they're using whatever it is that they're using, if they're still gainfully employed, and they can afford to put some of this stuff in the market, you will still have growth. You will still have that, but you have to know it's long-term money. Like I said earlier, this is not something to do short-term, because
Right.
you might be in a situation where, okay, I'm at year 25, I need my money. Well, that would just be very unfortunate if you had to use that money. So this is, again, long-term, but
Right.
you have to know that the volatility is here to stay. It's not going to go away. We've lived it since the inception of the stock market, and as long as you understand that this is normal, and you remember this chart. Let me get rid of this. That it sort of brings a sense of calm, knowing that this is just par for the course.
Well, I think it's interesting you say that, because sometimes, I always tell my kids anyway, I tell them, look, nothing changes until something changes. So you can't just keep doing the same thing and hope for a different result. So yeah, maybe my time horizon is only 10 years, not 30. Maybe I don't have $1 million. I have 50 grand or 100 grand or 500 grand. But I know what inaction looks like. I know what that brings me. So let me try something different. And that's the only way that I'm going to get a different result, is try something different. But you don't want to do it haphazardly. You don't want to be doing it like winging it, like sometimes, to be honest with you, I'm guilty of doing sometimes myself. Can you just touch on the word correction? Because you use the term correction and you pointed to these things on the bottom. People, I don't think necessarily understand, and frankly, I'm not sure if I do. What does it mean if the market is correcting itself? What does that mean?
Well, there's many reasons why the market will correct and or just, become very bearish, which means the market is going down.
Is retreating.
I'm sorry?
Retreating.
Yes.
Okay.
So, COVID obviously was a situation that affected not only, individuals' health and well-being, but it affected our financial well-being. There was job losses, there was companies who lost,
Sure.
Companies who closed, restaurants. Yeah. I mean, it just with the gambit, the airlines, the hospitality industry. I mean, it ran the gambit. So as a result of all that, we had the corporations obviously had huge losses. So we saw that correction, whether they were overvalued or undervalued, it's hard to know, but that correction was part of what happened that was outside of our control. And so we didn't expect COVID to happen. We don't expect, we don't know what the future holds. We don't know future tragedies or it just, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So in looking at history, we see that on average, there's a correction with regards to companies who fail, companies who have a consequence as a result of a war or COVID. And this is just an example of that this volatility just happens all the time.
It sounds to me like the market, like the word correction could be seen as the market responding to what's going on. I mean, is that kind of a way to characterize it?
Absolutely.
It's a market response to what's going on in the world around us.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we may have touched upon this a little bit, but this leads to my last question. And of course, gosh, I could talk to you all day. You're so delightful, Patti.
Oh, my thank you.
Yeah.
Likewise.
What is this notion of a money story? You have mentioned that to me in the past, when not today necessarily, but somebody's money story. How does that fit in? Can you elaborate on that? And you may have touched on it a little bit already.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Our money story is, well, first let me say I can talk for an hour on this topic. So I'll try to keep it short and sweet. We all have thoughts and beliefs and limiting beliefs usually, and it's a result of what we heard growing up. So from birth to about 8 or 9 years old, we were a sponge. We heard our parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, whatever we were surrounded by. We would hear their thoughts and opinions and their belief systems, and we took it on as ourselves, our own thoughts and beliefs. And if we grew up with parents who, grew up in the Great Depression, or their parents did whatever our age is, their story was of lack and fear and hoarding, because in the Great Depression people lost everything. So
right.
We have to be, and at that point, at that age, you don't have a filter to say, you know what, that doesn't make any sense. I don't agree with that filter. I don't agree with that belief system. So as we're getting older, we still have the ability to, we have a better ability to filter out things that we don't agree with, but we're still having these programs in our mind that's really in our subconscious. It's sort of like this neural pathway in our brain that's on a loop. We're just over and over, we're hearing these same things. So if our mindset is of lack, is of fear, and not of abundance or opportunity, then we will make decisions in our life, and especially when it comes to our money, based on that belief system. And those limited beliefs are oftentimes very, they could be very hurtful to us, especially when it comes to our money. And I equate it to having like an internal thermostat. So a thermostat on the wall, if it's set at 70 degrees and it's 100 degrees outside, the air will pop on and it'll cool the room down to 70. If it's 40 degrees outside, the heat will kick on and it'll raise the temperature to that 70, so it's comfortable. And that's another word, comfortable. Things that are familiar to us, which is why you see lotto winners. 70% of lotto winners lose their money after just a few short years. You hear about athletes or actors and actresses coming into large sums of money. There's, their internal thermostat is set at a certain level. And if suddenly they have this windfall, they're uncomfortable. It's not familiar. They don't know what to do.
So their belief system shapes, to a large extent, what happens.
Yes.
It's not so much the amount of money, it's more the belief system.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And then having, if their belief system, if they know this is not, I don't, this is not right, this is not good. If they get the help of an advisor or a money coach or a money manager or, an outside advisor of some kind that, helps them to manage those thoughts and manage that money, obviously that's a great way to go. But they have to know to get that help. They have to know to reach out and say, okay, I've got this sudden, if you're blessed enough to win $5 million in the lottery, if they go, okay, I'm going to do something with this that I know I should be doing. And we see a lot of individuals who inherit money that's from family, who take a very conservative approach because they think this is money that my parents or my grandparents gave me. They've worked hard for it. I need to protect this with every ounce of my being. And so they stay a little too conservative. They don't look at, really the best financial. So we have that delicate balancing act between, respecting and managing that piece, and also looking at from a financial perspective, the best way to grow that, yet keep it safe. So,
well, I love the way you explained that. And I think, when I'll share I do have clients who do inherit money and they come and see me. And sometimes they are very reluctant to touch that money. There's a lot of psychological stuff happening.
Absolutely. It's
very interesting. And sometimes they don't have, if they weren't even prepared for it, sometimes it's like paralysis by analysis, so they just don't do anything.
Yeah.
And also, I suppose if several siblings are receiving something, that might cause other psychological issues as well. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the money story equation before we sign off today? Because I've already taken up enough of your time today.
Well, you're sweet. I would just say be mindful of it. Just know that it's there, and maybe check in with yourself and go, okay, what is my money story? What did I grow up hearing? What do I believe to be true? There's even some, and again, I could talk for an hour on this, but there's some that think, okay, do I deserve this money? Do I, there's some of that. There's so much psychological stuff, and there's emotional behind it. So just check in with yourself. And it's not, you don't change your thoughts by just going, okay, I want to change my thoughts. It's like you can't turn the Titanic, it's a slow move, right? So be patient with yourself, be graceful with yourself, be mindful that these things exist, and just reach out for help and give yourself, again, some grace.
It's really amazing when you think about not just the financial planning or the legal world or the medical world. It's really psychological. I mean, 50% of it is psychological. 50% of it is maybe the how-to, the mechanics of it.
Yeah,
But I think you're absolutely right. When we start to really acknowledge how much of our decisions are based on our, in some cases, limiting beliefs. I mean,
absolutely.
I know that for me too. You know, sometimes we can amaze ourselves what we can actually do once we set our mind to it and once we get a little bit of help, and we shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. So
Yeah.
speaking of that, people who are not only happy with the information that you shared, but love your little red jacket there. How can they reach you, Patti? And there's no obligation, right? If they meet with you, are they, does that mean you have to be their financial advisor? Can they have an education meeting with you? What kind of things do you offer clients, and how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So we have what's called a discovery meeting. There's no cost, there's no obligation. I'm not a hard, salesperson. That's just not my MO.
You seem very aggressive and very abrasive to me. But that's just me. I could be wrong.
Thanks, Rob. Very funny. Yeah, we have what's called a discovery meeting, and basically we meet for about an hour or so, and we gather information. We understand their situation. We gather, their wants, needs, their personal story, and we then determine how we can help. And then if we want to take another step, we call a clarity meeting, and that's again no obligation, no cost meeting. It's really about gathering all that information to get a really good understanding of what the client's situation looks like. But yes, happy to help. Best way to reach me would be by email. It's Patti with an I, and so it's PATTI dot Handy, HANDY at vancewealth.com.
And you also have a lot of educational videos online, I think. I think even at the Vance Wealth website, right?
Yeah,
you have some
do.
educational videos.
Yeah, so Vance Wealth has a bunch of videos that John has done. I have a separate page called A Woman's Wealth that I have launched, and I've got training videos in there. They're usually like 3 or 4 minute long videos, and they're really geared to just be educational and short and sweet. And I have a women's group called The Collective, where it's not a networking group. It's just women serving women, and I bring in different guest speakers. We meet every other month virtually. And there's more to that, but I can share if any woman is interested in learning more. I would love to share that with you.
And the website is?
The website's just vancewealth.com. So VANCE wealth.com.
Okay, very good. Patti, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. We're going to make this available on my website, on my Facebook page, and things of that nature. And I trust you will probably share it as well.
Absolutely.
So that we can get these lessons out there. And just a plug for me, in case people want to learn more about estate planning, wills, living trust, that sort of thing, they can go to mansourlaw.com. And Mansour is on the screen, my last name right there, the word law.com. Or they can call my office at 661-414-7100. Again, Patti, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.